Welcome to the OC24 podcast from the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organised Crime. In this series, we'll bring you 12 of the best talks from this year's 24-hour conference on global organised crime. This episode is called Cocaine Hoppers, Nigerian International Cocaine Trafficking.
Welcome to this panel on Nigerian cocaine trafficking, cocaine hoppers. This is the title of this panel, the title of the book, written by Jude Obo. My name is Damian Saich. I'm associate professor in the criminology in Utrecht University and also part of GI-TOC, which is co-organizing this event. I have attended already 3 panels that show that cocaine trafficking is flourishing. So this is something that is certainly the case. We have tonight 3 experts in Nigerian organized crime. I will first introduce Jude Obo, and Jude will present his book in about 15 minutes. Then I will open the floor for Stefano and for Victor, which I will later on present properly, and they will react on the book of Jude. So Jude obtained his master and PhD degree in criminology at Utrecht University. This was in 2016, and he has been really consultant for more than 20 years with the Dutch Ministry of Justice. He lives now in America, and last year he published this book called Cocaine Hoppers, Nigerian International Cocaine Trafficking. In my view, unmissable work for those who want to research on Nigerian trafficking. It's really the result of more than 6 to 8 years of ethnographic research in various countries. And I had the pleasure, really, and the honor to accompany Jude in this journey all these years. And I'm convinced the book is we are going to discuss in this panel is key to understand why Nigeria and why Nigerians have been involved and are still involved in cocaine trafficking, both there but also in countries, for example, in Europe or countries that Jude would. So without delay, Jude, I will give you the floor.
Thank you, Damian, for introducing me. Let me first of all start with the fact that I made transition from agricultural engineering to studying criminology for developmental issues because of developmental issues in Nigeria. In the last decades, we have witnessed that Nigerians have dominated the cocaine trafficking from West Africa to destination countries globally, distributing cocaine internationally in markets, but also in the Nigerian market. The Nigerian market is then growing because of Nigerian involvement in international trade. They have become more and more involved in international trade. And the demand of cocaine is increasing in Nigeria exponentially, and that glamorizes supply. And supply glamorizes the enthusiasm of Nigerian traffickers in the international cocaine trafficking. In fact, as explicated in the book, Nigerian traffickers, this book, Nigerian traffickers follow the goods. Nigeria is everywhere. Think about like the Italians or the Indians or the Chinese. We're everywhere in the world. However, the cocaine hoppers have strategically placed themselves in production countries in the Americas and transit nations like Brazil, #1 exporter of cocaine in the world, but also in all various hubs where cocaine is consumed in the world. Be it now in Europe, for instance, in the Netherlands, or in Italy, or in Britain, or in North America, take for instance, US or Canada, or in Asia, where we have now Nigerians are prominent in Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, and above all China, which is an upcoming market. China has succeeded in luring Nigerian traders to come to China for a long-term business relationship, but indirectly they lured in cocaine hoppers. So one important aspect that has glamorized, enhanced the activities of Nigerian cocaine traffickers is the Nigerian state crisis, leadership failure in Nigeria. It has characterized this endemic corruption in Nigeria, and corruption and organized crime at all levels of society. Therefore, it is one aspect that has characterized or enthusiased the 6 categories of cocaine hoppers as outlined here. Read further in the book, especially the small-scale traffickers who deploy the services of the couriers. Nigerians, in fact, have popularized the shotgun approach, use of couriers. They name it the battlefield approach, sending as many as couriers in their quest for the edge work involved in the international cocaine trafficking. They swallow balls of cocaine and go into countries regardless of death penalty. For instance, in China, in Indonesia, in Malaysia, or in Dubai, in United Arab Emirates, Dubai. But also in countries where that have light imprisonment, lengthy imprisonment for drug trafficking. Consider Brazil, for instance, that has a very historical connection with Nigeria through the slave trade. Nigerians as well, they are not concerned about the drug exploding in their stomach. Therefore, the huge financial reward that the cocaine trafficking ensures to those who succeed is an ulterior motive. Likewise, the war on drug. The war on drug categorically has fueled cocaine trafficking. It has failed to achieve the expected results. It has failed to eradicate drug trafficking or consumption. Instead, in contrary, the war on drug has increased cocaine trafficking because cocaine production has increased in production countries, Colombia, Bolivia, and Peru. Trafficking has increased, as cocaine hoppers have shown in reading this book, but also incarceration has increased. The number of people jailed for trafficking drug, mostly poor couriers and poor people who are jailed. Consider the prison warehouse today, what it means to the military industry, to the criminal justice as a whole. Consider also that all these people are lavishing in jails, some murdered for drug trafficking. Therefore, the war on drug has failed. But why is it allowed to continue? Why has the criminal justice system that has failed to continue? Why was it allowed to continue? It has yielded benefits to those connected, to the most powerful connected in this industry. In fact, think of the prison, the warehouse prison industry, what that means to the military and the criminal justice. The war on drug, the focus on only military solution for a social problem has failed woefully, but it has succeeded in encouraging the war on drug, the big money that the prison industry generates. But also, it has encouraged drug barons to go ahead to make billions, siphoning tax in all countries. Likewise, cocaine hoppers, when successful. However, as I explained in the book, change is needed. We are in the time is right, and the tendency is growing. The accent has shifted and is shifting gradually to decriminalization, regularization, and harm reduction alternative. This, I'm convinced, is the future head-on. And we have spent almost a century promoting what drug prohibition in the world that has categorically failed. Fighting a war that has no enemy. Time has come for a change. And we have information from countries, models to follow in this area. For instance, the Dutch, the Netherlands, that decriminalized drug, especially marijuana, right from the 1960s, end 1960s, early 70s, with the normalization policy. In fact, the Dutch realized that normal people use drug. Drug is used by normal people. That's why they implemented the normalization policy that decriminalized marijuana. By doing so, the Dutch became the first country in the world to realize that alternative works and works good. It has created a win-win situation, as explained further in cocaine hoppers, for society. On the other hand, the Dutch decriminalized marijuana. It can be sold in special stores called the coffee shop. They took away the illegality, the drug money from the drug barons and handed over to business-like society that pay tax. In other words, generating huge amount of revenue for the Dutch government, a revenue in the tune of 315 million euros as a 2016-2017 data. And this is every year in a business that is worth 1.6 billion. They have less people to jail. In fact, the Netherlands the prisons in the Netherlands is closing because they cannot find people to jail. Also, contrary to several other countries, take for instance, Britain or Brazil or the United States, that is warehousing about 2.2 or 2.4 million people in prisons, most of them convicted for drug trafficking, about 25%. So the Dutch led the way. They have shown that normalization policy works by decriminalizing marijuana and raising enough revenue. Other countries that have similar problem, that face similar problem in drug trafficking, could emulate the Netherlands that stands out, especially for countries like Nigeria, a country that is suffering from acute unemployment, instability at all levels, leadership problem that has fueled the illicit trade in the first place. By legalizing or decriminalizing cannabis, it will generate more revenue for the government, minimize the effect of the war on drugs or stop it entirely, stop pampering to the wishes of the international community that send arms to the Nigerian military used in holding the status quo and preventing change in the country. So I think that reinvesting the resources in Nigeria, the heavy resources spent in the future war on drugs, we open a new future for the hopeless youths that could turn farmer. Seen from this angle, reuniting my experience with agriculture and criminology, I think that marijuana, if decriminalized in Nigeria, will create jobs, create revenue for government. Marijuana or cannabis is highly in demand, not only as recreational products, but in the pharmaceutical industry, as well as the food industry, the textile industry, to mention but a few. It is a business that is estimated to generate about $2.2 billion, especially if Nigeria could take this advantage in a country where the resources are there, we have water, we have land and everything, and the cannabis grows naturally. You don't need to fertilize it or even cultivate it. All is needed is drop the seed and the cannabis will grow naturally. However, the irony is that Europe and now America or Canada and Australia all are producing cannabis, encouraging, investing heavily on that. The European Union investing up to the tune of 500 billion euros in it. and planning to rip off billions in about 10 years. Ironically, these are the countries that in one way, intentionally or unintentionally, encourage the Nigerian government, send assistance to Nigerian government. The military focus on drug control as the only option, to the exclusion of other professionals in Nigeria. Nigeria, in fact, is the only place where the NDLEA, the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, is the only organization that handles drug issues, from prosecution to even rehabilitation of drug addicts. That's the only country that does that in the world, not in the Netherlands, not in America, not even in Ghana, not even in all countries. Why? It is in the hands of the military, old military people that maintain the status quo, that gives a lot of benefits to them, but destroys the Nigerian as a whole. I will stop here. I think that I have explained enough in cocaine hoppers, and thank you for presenting that this is more than 20 years experience working for the criminal justice system in the Netherlands. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jude. I'm sure there will be questions. You can always put them already. Some are dropping in. Okay. I would like now to give the floor to Stefano Beccucci. Stefano Beccucci is Associated Professor in Sociology in the Department of Sociology and Political Sciences, the University of Florence. Great, beautiful city. He's an expert in Italian and foreign organized crime in various illegal markets. And of course, he also did research and published on Nigerian criminal groups in Italy. So, Stefano, the floor is yours. I mean, take your time, let's say between 5-10 minutes to react on the work of Jude.
Okay, thank you very much, Jude and Damian for the presentation, introduction. And yes, just let me say something about the Nigerian criminal groups operating, acting in Italy, because in that way we can compare the things I read by Jude in his book. I think about the book is one of the best research done in the last, I think, 6, 7, maybe more year ago, because, for example, I know Phil Williams, Stephen Ellis wrote research on the Nigerian criminal groups at the international level, worldwide. But that one is first is updated. Second, it's really a wider research involving different kind of countries and continents, from Brazil to China to Malaysia, some other East, South Asia countries, including European countries. In that case, it's the best research I read in the last period, and it's also based on field research, collecting different kind of interviews with former member, with member of criminal gangs, law enforcement, and so on. And in that case, just let me back to the Italian situation, at least Italian situation. Let's say what I know about this, what I know. According to some judiciary files, investigation which happened in the last more or less 10 years, the problem about Nigerian criminal groups is mainly based on organizations. Organization means cultist groups. There is quite a strict hierarchy inside the group. There is a hierarchy at the national level for Italy and also at local level, according to the different role played by the leader, the head at local level, and so on. And one thing at least for Italian situation, the strength of these criminal groups is in great part based on their organization. There is they use some kind of rituals to decide that some people come in the organization, and also there is an hierarchy which is based on connection at international level, especially, of course, with Nigeria or some kind of states in Nigeria. They think that in that case, let's say comparing the situation about what I said and the contest information collected reading the book by Jude. First, I'd like to understand better about your knowledge, about your research field, information collected, and so on. What kind of what do you think about the Nigerian criminal groups operating at international level? Are they, let's say, gangs? No, really just not really connected among them. Are contrarily, they are for a more structured criminal group connected with before you said that you were talking about the crisis of the state, the Nigerian state, no? In some authors, few, to be honest, a few authors talk about a political nexus, or let's say a criminal political nexus inside the Nigerian states. What kind of idea you have about that? In other words, there is a connection between criminal groups, Nigerian criminal groups involved in the drug trafficking at national level, and the authority, Nigerian authority in the country. It's only a question, let's say, of corruption, or otherwise leader criminal groups acting in Nigeria and abroad are connected or not. It's a question with the state, the different with the politicians, for example. As in Italy, the main problem we have about mafia, different kind of mafia, from Sicilian mafia to drunkard and so on. The main problem that we have is related to the connection with the economic sectors, entrepreneurs, but also with politicians. And at the moment, talking about Italian mafia, the only really, let's say, authority which really engaged against Italian mafia are judges, prosecutors, politicians. We had the election last this 25th September. No politicians talk about the problem about mafia in Italy. Nobody. It seems that the problem does not exist. I was trying to understand better about your country, if they have this or not a connection and with the authorities, politicians, with economic in your country. If they have, what kind of connection they are, in which terms, let's say. According to, I'm finished. Just I have some other question, but I prefer to. The one is it's let's say it takes time, and just it's that it could be an explanation. I don't know what you can answer about this, but it could, if they have a connections, it could be an explanation. Let's say to give some insight on why these criminal groups are spread at international level. You know, they are able to have to have a form of synergy between politics, economics, and so on.
Thank you, Stefano, for the question. In fact, it's an interesting one. I think that the Nigerian criminal groups already, they are organized in the sense that also they are disorganized, just like Nigeria itself. Nothing in Nigeria is heavily organized. So I've noticed in my research that the Nigerian criminal gangs, yes, they have a connection to the summit of power. That connection always exists. As outlined in the book, using the revised social capital theory, that it is true using that connection that they succeed in drug trafficking. That is why, for instance, there is recently the Inspector General of Police in Nigeria has been arrested for drug trafficking, involvement in drug trafficking. He was implicated and was arrested only because the United States stepped in, the intelligence stepped in. Otherwise, nothing could happen, because in your question, the connection is clear, because even the former president of Nigeria said that the Senate in Nigeria is infested with drug traffickers or 419ers, that's basically fraudsters. It is the basis of an organized crime in Nigeria that we recall the definition of unorganized crime elsewhere, that draws from the traditional organized crime in Nigeria, linking the powerful to the society. Take, for instance, the Ogbonu traditional organized crime. But at the same time, we have the new organized crime, whereby you have 5 or different people come together to exploit criminal activity on a continuous basis. They have link to the government. Without that, the fact that drug trafficking or crime is big business in Nigeria explains that. Embezzlement is very much encouraged. So it's interesting in another way to realize that you observe that Nigerians in Italy have metamorphosed to a kind of hierarchical kind of organized crime in Italy, meaning this adaptation to local context in Italy. Elsewhere in Nigeria, it's more of a cooperation kind of thing. I observed a cooperation kind of thing. Even in the most recent, like the youth organized crime, the bagger, or secret groups, cults, the bagger, the ayer, rising from the universities in Nigeria, group of young people that has been exported. I came across them in cocaine trafficking as well. They are very much prominent internationally. The question, how did they export this internationally? Bear in mind that Nigerians already were globalized following slave trade, following colonization, and persistent leadership failure in Nigeria, the brain drain in Nigeria. Again, Nigerians, in terms of organized crime, hold the West responsible for what is happening to their country and development of organized crime at all levels of society, because they argue that the kidnappers of Nigeria, which is what we are referring to,
also
at all political level, at all ministerial level, even starting from head of states. We have had it. A head of state that run a country as a criminal group, placing its cronies at important positions in order to siphon the nation's wealth. Is a kind of pre-vandalism that happened in England in the early days. It's executive lawlessness, as I described in cocaine hoppers.
Okay, thank you very much, Jude. I would like to really now give the floor to Victor Akpan. He's in Abuja, I understand. Victor is a licensed pharmacist with 30 years of experience. He holds a PhD in pharmacology and toxicology by the University of Florence. He's advisor of many national and international bodies. He has extensively researched the devastating effects of oil and gas exploitation in the Niger Delta region. And he has also done more recently research. He's doing research on various green crimes in the Gulf of Guinea. So, Victor, I would like you to give the floor, let's say for 5, max 10 minutes, but also you can talk about the book, but also ask a question to Jude before we open the floor for further discussion.
Thank you, Damien, for introducing me. Thank you, Stefano. Royce is my very good friend and a colleague. We all studied together in the University of Florence. He is a very passionate Nigerian. One thing that baffles me is where he gets the energy to be an agronomist and then a criminologist at the same time. But I know he was provoked. He has not said that he is a registered trained police officer of the Nigerian Reserve Police Force. So, Royce, I'm very pleased to be on the panel about this book because I've seen the manuscript when it was manuscript in the forma bruta, and then now it is an excellent book. I've read everything.
Thank you.
Now, my position is that you have handled the state crisis in Nigeria. You remember, we ended up in Italy because of the state crisis in Nigeria.
Exactly.
The universities in Nigeria function, they produce good graduates, but we wanted something better and where we could measure ourselves with the international students out there. And we went to Italy. We studied the language and then we got there and graduated. Now, it is not, the book is not set to portray Nigerians as criminals in the world.
Right.
Let nobody have that in mind. I'm now defending, we are a very brilliant set of humans in Africa. I think we lead in Africa, Nigerians. But unfortunately, our leadership is almost overtaken by the bad side of leadership. And this book has shown that give a Nigerian the opportunity, he will excel even in the worst things. And that is really unfortunate. You have mentioned a very important aspect of leadership crisis that has led to the flourishing of criminal gangs and cocaine. Let me point to cocaine because when we were students, initially, we used to hear of marijuana among students who were unable to pay their school fees in Italy or sustain themselves. They would bring marijuana to come and sell. You remember?
Exactly.
And some of them were arrested in discotheques, in bathrooms and stuff like that, in supermarkets in the 70s, the late 70s. I arrived in Italy for the first time on the 8th of May, 1978. So during that period, we had that. But the state crisis was there, which I'm happy your book has captured. Because we have to look at the genesis of the things in Nigeria. That was when the economy collapsed, the exchange rate collapsed, and students' parents, the dollar went from 66 kobo 66 centesimi di al due naira e 20 compagnia bella. And we had to abandon school for some years or for months to go and work in order to continue studying. And some Nigerian students who hadn't the ability to study and work went into, and they were approached by the local mafia in Italy, where they started being criminals. You have captured, I don't know whether you have captured that, but you've seen.
Oh, yes, I did.
Yes, and you've seen that. Then there was another aspect. The women came, they used to come to buy, to go and sell. They then came and prostituted in order to buy goods to go and sell. I don't know whether you've captured, it seems you've captured that. But then later, these same women turned into traffickers of drugs and humans. So we can see it is very important that authors and panelists see that nexus between the collapse of the political system, economic system, social system, and general state failure. As I'm sitting in Abuja, I'm using a torchlight because there is no electricity. And I can't put on my laptop because the connectivity is very poor. Yet, this is a country that produces crude oil, and I've studied it. You wouldn't believe that there is a nexus between the very fact that there is no light, because there are also people who must import generators and import refined products. So Nigeria is like somebody who runs a pizzeria in Piazza Novana oppure a Firenze, and then at home he has nothing to eat, because and that is what is fueling the desperation that we see as Royce has captured. But I don't want to buy into the totality of Royce's analysis without making some distinctions. I know that there is something in the Nigerian that can also deter him from participating in criminal acts, no matter how desperate he is. That is family value. What values did you receive from your parents? Stefano will have something to say as a sociologist. Otherwise, I can't see myself, I couldn't just possibly see myself, Victor Okpan, coming all the way from Nigeria to come and be a cocaine pusher or drug addict or anything else, apart from the fact that my intention was to come to Italy, study, get the best degrees, and make myself available in the best possible way. For instance, we had mates. Stefano will explain this to us as a sociologist. Those things did not attract us. I still remember one day in Rome at the train station, one Nigerian approached me and told me that he had cocaine or drugs to sell, whether I could find him. I told him to get away, I would, I looked for the police. There was no nearby policeman. I wanted to hand him into the police. But later, I heard that he was serving a sentence, 10 years sentence somewhere in Latina, the same person. So even though I walked away quickly, he must have been caught. And that is a system that punishes, where Royce has linked also very, very important. There is that book, Crime Must Be Punished and Dealt With. seriously by the criminal justice system. But
2 minutes, Victor, 2 minutes.
My time is up.
It's
Yeah.
2 minutes, 2 minutes.
Okay. At any rate, I still have a lot of questions. But another point that I wanted to raise, which we discussed yesterday with Royce after this is the very fact that the NDLA, the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, cannot be the tutofare, the be all and end all. We have to bring in professionals because Nigeria has become a manufacturer. Now we have, that's why I say wahala. We have compounded it. We have become consumers, producers, exporters. Now we have graduated into synthetic materials with devastating effects on society. And then another thing is that they are cheap for a poor nation. And that means we are real big trouble in our hands. And the book is very timely. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Victor, for keeping time and for your biographical experiences. I mean, this is something I like very much of this panel, is that you're not really talking about only about as experts, but as people that really lived all these things in very close. Before I continue, well, first of all, let me encourage the viewers now to either raise their hand or write the questions in the chat. Before I pass again the word to Stefano for a further question, I would like to phrase here a long question posed by Rafael Mareto. Rafael basically asked that there have been some kind of transformations from the 80s to the 21st century in the involvement of Nigerians in the business. So if you can, Jude, say something about this, or how the involvement now in the 21st century differs than the one in the 80s. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that Rafael want to ask is the relationship with other illegal actors or activities. There was a little bit discussion on political actors, but for example, what about human smuggling, and what is the relation between how Nigerians connect, for example, drug trafficking with human trafficking or with other illegal activities? There was, well, and then we will go back maybe with because there was in the other panel, the discussion about the relationship with Boko Haram and is there any relation with political actors or terrorists or criminal organizations and terror organizations in Colombia, but sorry, in Nigeria. So Jude, these are the questions from Rafael.
Yes, thank you, Rafael, for asking those questions. First of all, let me start that, yes, why cocaine hoppers draw from the activities of already drug trafficking nexus in Nigeria in the 80s, but that nexus has evolved because time has evolved, because technology now has made certain things possible. Before, prior to the 80s, and then we weren't so much advanced. So Nigerians were already smuggling stuff like marijuana. Victor narrated our experiences in the 70s, getting to Italy and how that was smuggled. It was, however, limited to a number of people in the 80s. In the 80s already, we already left Nigeria, we were in Italy. However, prior to that, there was drugs in Nigeria. Marijuana was there. It was already stigmatized. We know that it was being smuggled. In the 70s, the synthetic drugs also were there in Nigeria. At secondary school level, we all knew about Mandrax. That is a party drug that you would take. But then, that does not mean that everybody were involved in it. Just like Victor have explained, tied to values you have from home and what you have you internalized as a person. Therefore, in the 80s already, there were drugs, but the number of participants is the limited factor. Already in the 80s, Nigerian government executed a number of people for cocaine trafficking, and that sent a shockwave to the nation. Most people thought that, hey, if you get into drug, if you are caught, you face firing squad because those 3 boys were fired and killed in Nigeria in a public square. So that, unfortunately, it wasn't deterrent enough. It meant a lot because we all heard about that and the effects of it. Nigerians talk it. Nigerians both at home and in the diaspora talked about it. So the metamorphosis of from the 80s to the present day Nigerian, a lot happened. For instance, the criminalization or the fact that Nigerian was satisfied and dissatisfied as a narcotic nation helped to democratize drug trafficking in Nigeria. Basically, the official involvement of elites, like the former head of state in Nigeria, has alleged the international community said that the Nigerian government basically is a narco state because of high-powered involvement of elites in the cocaine trafficking already in the 80s. However, because the said person, the number 1 governor of Nigeria then, or the military governor, nobody was arrested, meaning the crime of the powerful was not arrested. People talked about it. The whole world talked about it. In Canada, in Europe, everybody talked about it. Yet, all the cronies and those people that were involved, in fact, that attracted the attention of the South Americans and brought them into the country, for the fact that they weren't arrested and prosecuted, meant that if you are connected to the summit of power in Nigeria, it sent that message that you can go free. And it democratized cocaine trafficking. People even nicknamed the person involved as Maradona, drawing that with that parallel with Maradona of Argentina, how he dribbles, that he dribbled the whole thing and that he avoided prosecution at the international level and at home. So that incident, in fact, was a founding and a very important moment for Nigerians. And the fact that the outcry of the policy that killed drug traffickers, killed those 3 Nigerians for trafficking cocaine in the 80s, and the people outcry that that must stop. And then the incident of the narco state Nigeria, the criminalization of Nigeria. One of the consequences of it is that Nigerians found it very difficult to get visa to travel, and that affected Victor right now. Victor, you are the latest victim of that, but that has been ongoing right from the 80s already, the mid-80s. So what has changed in RAF is that now the phenomenon has evolved more. Nigerians have become aware of it more. A lot more participants have joined the crowd. Before, it was limited number of people, something done by the elite, but that has filtered gradually to the ordinary people. They have discovered that if you are successful, you have money. Probably you have saved yourself from poverty. And second part is using the Nigerian, the revised social capital, that's connection, to enhance criminal activities and amass any amount of money in Nigeria without the slightest conscience.
Okay.
If you have that connection, you can be arrested. If you have connection to the Nigerian police, you can be arrested. Basically, you pay money. Basically, they participate. They want the cut of their own cut from the cake. This is a mentality, the celebration of criminality, and the acceptance of festival of crimes in Nigeria that is what has changed. So much more people got involved in drug trafficking. In fact, Nigerians have popularized the drug shotgun approach or battlefield approach, that is career swallowing cocaine balls, as I depicted here in my book.
Jude, what is the relation between your cocaine hoppers and, for example, other forms of criminality like
yes,
human trafficking?
Like human trafficking, I
smuggling?
explained that in various chapters also in the book. There is a clear connection with that because we have seen that money generated from cocaine trafficking or from human trafficking is reinvested to bring someone from Nigeria, to reinvested to bring a close relative or a friend, pay his visa, get him out of Nigeria. That is already human trafficking. Or get young girls, because as visas, the price of visa is known in Nigeria. For example, in this case of Italian language, Italian embassy, or in the Chinese, Nigerians are spoken about their connections within the visa racketeer business.
Right.
If you have money, you can get visa, and that enhances human smuggling. In other words, money gained from minority prostitution, women prostitution in abroad can be reinvested also in sending a career. I talked about participation of part-time cocaine traffickers in my book, in cocaine hoppers. The part-time cocaine traffickers are not any other person that normal people that have jobs or that have businesses, but decide to sponsor cocaine trips. In that, whether the money comes from prostitution or it comes from embezzlement in Nigeria, there is this clear connection which I discussed in cocaine hoppers.
Okay, thank you very much. I really would like now to give the floor to Stefano because I've seen him very interested hearing Jude. I'm sure he has more questions.
Okay.
Yes, just a question, Jude.
Yeah.
Which is the role when you analyze the situation of Nigerian criminal groups abroad, especially I think China, Guangzhou in China province, Guangzhou in China, Brasilia, São Paulo in Brazil. Do they cooperate with other criminal groups inside in the autochthon criminal groups? Do they cooperate? I think it doesn't seem that there is a conflict among Nigerian criminal groups and the local criminal groups. It doesn't seem that there is a conflict reading the book. However, if you have some information or you can say something about this, because let's say, and this is the first question, which is the relationship with Nigerian criminal groups in the country abroad where they are. Second, if they, let's say they pay attention, I'm talking always Nigerian criminal groups, they pay attention to keep on a low profile, because they don't want to get to conflict with autochthon criminal groups. They stay, or do they stay always inside the community, or they have of course the question is only about Nigerian criminal groups. Do they have a relationship outside their fellow countrymen?
Yes, thank you, Stefano.
Yep.
That's a good one. My experience is researching cocaine hoppers. Yes, I have seen that in as much as Nigerians use the concept of strong ties and weak ties, That is very much elaborated in cocaine hoppers. Nigerians are in between. For instance, in Brazil, they cannot compete. They are very much outspoken with that. They cannot compete with, say, the PCC in Brazil, or the Comando Vermelho in Brazil. In fact, in Italy, can they really compete with mafia? No. Nigerians are immigrants, small group immigrants, proletarians. They are like small groups. They are enclaves, small enclaves of people. So they are not well adapted, well into the mainstream organized crime. However, individually, whether we're talking about now the Abaga or the Aye, that has been exported to outside, is more. I found that it is more these Nigerian criminal groups, a group, 2-3 friends together, that has made the connection, that know, using their weak ties, that is going outside the Nigerian strong ties, Nigerian hanging together with one another. I described that in the section that talked about Brazil in enough, because staying among Nigerians always doesn't really yield the expected advantages all the time. So the most advanced or the most intelligent drug traffickers cross the border. They go, they have friendship with locals. So it's a symbiotic kind of relationship, but not antagonists, because they say it themselves, we are only small traffickers. In fact, that is why Nigerians specialize in trafficking small quantities of cocaine. They cannot compete with the Colombians, or neither the Argentinians, or neither the Dutch, or neither the British, or the Italians, or the Mexicans, for example, in the United States. They said, do it small, small, small. However, for those people that have got the chance of graduating to trafficking in bulky cocaine, teams up with local counterparts. In fact, as it said in criminology, that no criminal groups, foreign criminal groups, succeed in a foreign land without having a connection to the local criminal gangs. This has been experienced in Brazil, and cocaine hoppers have demonstrated that. They have also demonstrated in Malaysia and in China, for instance. However, they are not in the mainstream. They have only connections that deliver their expected goals, that give them the opportunity to be doing their small-scale distribution. They are not competing with locals.
Yep.
Clear. Okay. I think we will have to leave it here again. Cocaine hoppers from Jude. Very nice to have you both, all of you three. Thank you very much, Jude, Stefano, and Victor, for this panel. I encourage people to continue this discussion in next panels on African and Nigerian organized crime. Thank you again.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the OC24 podcast from the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organised Crime. This talk was just one of 85 from this year's 24-hour conference on global organised crime. To get access to the rest, head over to oc24.heysummit.com. Thanks for listening.